Hello, thanks for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguela. The progress of any nation depends largely on its people. And as citizens, it is our civic duty and obligation to abide by the laws and order of the nation and maintain harmonious coexistence for the overall development of the country. Nigeria just turned 63 years, and it is only natural to reflect on the successes and raise concerns on the challenges bedeviling the country. Well, as government strives on its part to promote effective leadership, as citizens, we all have a role to play to achieve the desired change. In the spirit of patriotism, sacrifice, and love for motherland, there is a task of nation building before every citizen. There is also a mandate before the National Orientation Agency to consistently raise awareness, promote positive change of attitudes, values, and behaviors of citizens by accurately and adequately informing the populace on ways to promote peace and harmony. It is the responsibility of the agency to ensure citizens demonstrate core values of honesty, hard work, and resilience. Well, the main objective of the agency, as provided in Decree 100 of 1993, is to ensure that government programs and policies are better understood by the general public and mobilize favorable public opinion for such programs and policies. But a question would definitely come to mind: how well has the agency pushed to create awareness and enlighten citizens to actively participate in nation building and embrace policy reforms established by the federal government? Our focus on Platform is citizens' participation in nation building, and our guest is Director General of National Orientation Agency, Dr. Garba Abari. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Abari.
Thank you very much.
It's our pleasure. And just before we bring in our panelists, we'll take you through a bit of Dr. Abari's profile. Dr. Garba Abari holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Political Sciences, Master's degree in International Relations from the University of Kent, Canterbury, MPhil in Political Economy, and PhD in Political Economy. Dr. Garba Abari is a senior lecturer in the Department of Political Science, University of Maiduguri. He has taught political economy, international economic relations, and comparative politics at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. He has about 18 publications to his credit. That's for both national and international journals. He's a member of Nigerian Political Science Association, member African Political Science Association, member Nigerian Society of International Affairs, founding member African Anti-Imperialist Youth Front, founder Nigeria South Africa Friendship Association. He's also the chairman Independent Poverty Alleviation Initiative and also national coordinator Anti-Debt Front. Let's leave it there. There's so much tied to his credits. Well done to all of that. All right, our panelist is our orientation correspondent, let's put it that way, Kenneth Enanim. Kenneth, it's a pleasure to have you on Platform.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm glad to be here.
It's our pleasure. Dr. Abari, once again, welcome to Platform.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We're still in the euphoria of our 63rd independence anniversary. And there's a whole lot, that have been said this past few days. And this is a time, of course, for reflection, looking at the years, how we have fared. 63 years, it's a lot. And the whole point of action, of course, should be on both ends. While government is doing its own part, citizens are expected to do their own part. And our focus is citizens' participation in nation building. But from your perception, let's paint a picture for Nigeria. How would you say Nigeria has fared?
Thank you very much. And congratulations to all Nigerians on the occasion of our 63rd independence anniversary. The journey has been rather tumultuous. It has not been smooth, but all said and done, I think the country has fared well. Up until very recently, up until maybe the last 20 years or thereabout, things have not been as bad as they are today. In terms of progress going by the economic metrics, going by social indices, I think the country has done well. We are not there yet. In fact, we are far from where we want to be, but we are actually not at where we started. Occasion of our 63rd independence anniversary is one that calls for sober reflection. Of course, we can bring out the drums and begin to beat them. And of course, get a bit a sense of exhilaration and dance to the tunes.
Yeah.
Because it's an occasion truly that calls for celebration, given the challenges that the country had passed through. Yet, we have remained one solid, united, indivisible country.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, all the challenges that there are, I want you to know that. But the very fact that we have remained one united, indivisible country, I think is a point enough to call for celebration. All said and done, I would want to say that at 63, if we are to go by the quantum of resources that this country has, both in terms of human and the material resources, I think I can say that the progress is not in equal quantums, to these massive natural and human endowments.
Okay.
We have a country that is full of resourceful people, very entrepreneurial people, highly educated people, with a lot of zeal and enthusiasm. We have resources both from the top to the bottom, yet we have not been able to harness, to marshal, to bring all of this to where the country can be said to have recorded commendable successes. You can see clearly that we have a very long way to go,
okay,
but we have a reason to celebrate that we have remained a country, with full of hopes.
Yes, I like,
hopes.
Dr. Abari, I like the fact that you ended with hope, which is what every citizen is expected to live up to at this time, especially with the present administration's mantra of renewed hope. And this is also the time to arouse that consciousness of active citizens' participation. Let me allow my panelists come in now. Nanim.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ruth. Doc, I would want to know, from your mandate as the agency that carry out reorientation of the masses, of the public. We want to know what the agency, has been doing, to ensure that Nigerians are, mobilized, Nigerians are, brought together to participate actively, in governance, especially during elections,
Thank you very much, Ken. But let me begin by saying that if you take a cursory look at the enabling acts of the National Orientation Agency, you can see how very broad and cross-cutting the mandate of the agency are. And it is like there isn't anything under the earth that the National Orientation Agency is not expected to do.
Right, sir.
Yes. It is so large, it is so broad, it is so cross-cutting, everything, from communicating government policies, programs, and activities, to getting citizens' feedback, to sending special reports, to sending pulse of the nation reports, to creating political consciousness, to establishing social institutions for the promotion of democracy, to fight drug addiction, to fight banditry, to fight insecurity in general terms. Everything that you can imagine under the sun is the responsibility of the National Orientation Agency. Now, let me be specific when it comes to what Ken is asking.
Okay.
The this one issue of concern is actually that of creating the necessary awareness among citizens to create the requisite civic culture, And this is not something that you can actually gain by legislation. It is not something that you can get by administrative fiat. Now, creation of a citizenry with the requisite civic culture is actually a program of, that has its own processes, its own processes and procedures.
Yeah.
And it is something that evolves.
Exactly.
It is something that evolves. It's the responsibility of government to actually create the enabling environment for which citizens can get in themselves fully engaged. Now, let me give you a typical example. Before the elections of 2023, there has been a lot of hue and cry, a lot of despondency in the land, a lot of toxic messages in the polity, a lot of very sour grapes that had fouled the polity, and you begin to ask, are this actually the same Nigerians that are going to go into this election and come out after the elections, or these are Nigerians that will put the country on fire? And what we have been able to do, what Nigerians have been telling themselves, the accusation against one another, the toxic language against one another, made the international the community to even begin to think that this is a country that might not even get to the election. That before we get to the election, maybe the country will just erupt into conflagration. Yet, we had an election. Of course, there were incidences of skirmishes here and there. But the election that we had in this country was far, 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 far away from the expectation of the naysayers, who felt that at the end of the election, or even before the election could commence, the country would erupt in flames. So agencies such as the National Orientation Agency had gone actually into partnership, in addition to what we had been established to do, into partnership with civil society, with you people, the media, with traditional institutions that are traditional partners, with religious leaders. We went to all the nooks and the crannies in this country to send out messages of peaceful coexistence, the need to uphold political violence, the need to develop the requisite civic culture of electing responsible and the responsive leadership, and of course the need to get the political parties themselves to realize that they are principal beneficiaries of a successful election. Where it does not happen, then everybody will end up the loser. And of course, we send out these messages very clearly, and I would want to seize this opportunity to thank the NTA that has actually been sent almost on a daily basis, 2-3 times, airing our jingles, appealing to the political class mainly, to realize that unless you play according to the rules of the game, unless you are able to also rein in your supporters and the followers, we will end up with an election that will not augur well for the country, and therefore will make Nigeria's naysayers, begin to say, well, we have already said it. Okay. So I think the NOA, to a very large extent, cognizant of its obvious challenges, has done pretty well. Before the elections, after the elections, we have had a lot. We were able to do some scenario building, and were able to establish flash points. So one of our main area of activity was Kano before the elections. Before the government, immediately after the presidential elections, we focused on Kano for the governorship elections. After the presidential election, our next area flash point that we identified from our scenario building was Lagos. And we paid a lot of attention on Lagos and on Kano. after that, we also converge and bring all the media men and women here for a breakfast meeting in Abuja to say, we all have a responsibility. Let us agree as government, as civil society, and as you men and women of the media, what language, what message can we actually jointly all agree to populate the airwaves with? And that was the message. There is life after elections.
That's where I'm getting to, Dr. Abari. Yes, that has come and gone. There is a government in place now that really needs Nigerians to have that belief of renewed hope. And you are responsible, talking about the agency now, of, interpreting government policies, in terms of awareness to the public, and also getting the feedback based on your mandates from the public back to the government. There is a task ahead of you now, because this administration has its 8-point agenda. There are a lot of reforms we're already seeing happening in place. And if these reforms must happen, there must be active citizen participation. How are you dealing with all of this?
Let me first start by establishing again another scenario. And this is just not something that you find peculiar to Nigeria alone. Globally, it's a result of the shrinking civic space. You find that there is a widening gap, in terms of trust between citizens and government.
Yeah.
There is a trust deficit between citizens and government. We don't care what happens in other countries, but they may have concomitant effects on our own country as well, but we are concerned with our own experiences in-house.
Yes.
Over the years, because of dashed expectations, because governments over the years have not been coming to Nigerians clean. A lot of gaps were allowed to come in between citizens and the government in terms of communication. And communication is very important in terms of confidence building, in terms of trust building. When you are not able to come clean and you allow gaps, definitely fake news merchants, misinformation merchants, those who actually, and don't forget that information has now become capital. It has become capital.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is an intensive capital. So fake news merchants will definitely come in between and fill up the gaps. What we need, or what we do as an orientation agency, a citizens engagement agency, is to try as much as possible to minimize the communication gap by way of getting government policies, programs, and the activities to the people in ways and the manner in which the people could understand. And the only way to do that is not actually to sit down by addressing press conferences in Abuja or buy newspaper pages.
You have to reach the grassroots.
So you have to reach the people directly.
Yeah.
And when you reach the people in their places of domicile, you speak to them in the language they do understand.
Yeah.
That way, you are able to communicate with them. They get a sense of what government is doing. They give their own feedback, and such kind of feedbacks are being sent to government by way of reports. But there are also challenges with that. One of the big challenges is actually the size of the country and the quantum of the population, and the fact that information management, information dissemination, and attempts to create the necessary linkage, to close the necessary gaps that now exist between government and the citizens involves so many things. One, the capacity of those who will do it. The capacity of those who will do it. 2, the tools with which the capacitated competencies will carry out that responsibility. And then 3, the capital needed to do that.
Okay, Doc, if I'm coming here, yes, you were talking about, building capacity of people who are going to maybe possibly check, the influx of fake news and all of that. I also remember you have a program one time, where your agency was, training, building capacity of personnel, to check, to fact check information. So we want to know, how far is that program now? Do you have any feedback mechanism, to find out if the program has actually yielded the desired results?
Actually, the fact-check training was NOA's response to the ascendancy of this misinformation and the fake news that seem to be dominating our social space. Okay. So the National Orientation Agency, under Pillar 3 of our strategic program, decided to say over a period of 5 to 8 years, we will train and capacitate 1,000 fact checkers per state, including the Federal Capital Territory. So 37,000 fact checkers. As we are now, we have actually conducted 9 of such trainings, and it cut across all aspects of the public service and the private service. I mean, the private and public services, the security agencies, the media themselves, because we have brought in a lot of media competencies as partners to bring knowledge and the global best practices to ensure that fact checkers are trained in order to combat the incidences of fake news, misinformation, and disinformation. The 10th edition of the program, again, is coming up sometimes in November. So we are still on it gradually. Whether we have any monetary mechanism to know, yes, we do. Because for every training that has taken place, we are able to create WhatsApp groups of the participants. We link up with the institutions where such participants come from. And of course, we send out from the situation room of the NOA how much of such people who have come to participate in the training are able to translate this these competencies that they have acquired, this knowledge that they have acquired to combat fake news and misinformation. And because for every single fact checker you train his children, because he will impart that knowledge. If it is a wife, she can impart on her husband. If it is a husband, he would impact on the wife. And of course, if a competent, trained fact checker will also impact on his friends. So there is actually a multiplier effect.
That's
so
the chain you're talking about.
So we are looking at actually a number much larger than the 37,000 that we have already.
So, but what's the feedback mechanism you're getting based on this training of the fact checkers?
We are doing. They are doing well. They are doing very well.
Okay.
They are doing very well.
Okay, Dr. Abari, this is also the time that citizens are supposed to be mobilized. There's no actual time. Every time should be the time for active, positive identification of, the nation's affairs, or you want to put it, government affairs. And very critical is the protection of assets, infrastructure. We get to hear of vandalism some of the times. And these infrastructure, huge investments, huge resources have been spent, to build that. And then you hear it's been vandalized. How far has the agency gone to, create that sensitization to make people understand that this is for you?
Have ownership of
yes, this is for you.
Because
it doesn't make any sense.
On a personal note, actually, I'm even a victim of this vandalism because one evening I came out for a walk, and as I was walking, I was also walking on the sidelines, not knowing that one of the manholes, covers, the manhole covers had been removed.
Oh,
and actually, it was a very, in fact, it was a very bitter experience. What we think of. So even on that one alone, that would have made me truly an ambassador of protection of government property. Now, with the Ministry of Information, we have had, with the Ministry of Information, the National Orientation Agency had undertaken 4 different sensitization programs under what we call Campaign Against Unwholesome Social Practices, under which comes, or one of which of such unwholesome social practices is vandalization of government facilities.
Yeah.
We brought the Minister of Aviation to speak about the dangers of tampering with aviation facilities here in Abuja. We took such campaign was taken to Maiduguri, because I am from Maiduguri. My family today lives in Maiduguri. And there was a time when we stayed 2 solid years without electricity in Maiduguri, simply because of vandalism. And we took the sensitization to Maiduguri, because when such kind of things happen, they happen in the community. They happen in the community. The vandals are in the community. They come from either the villages or the community or the towns or whatever. People should know them, and so we have to create awareness to make people know that when you allow this kind of things to happen and you don't report, then everybody becomes a loser. In Maiduguri, to say, look, I don't know how many of you actually know how hot Maiduguri can get, during the hot season, and we had to stay for almost 2 years without electricity, simply because vandals have gone to cut off all the electricity cables and the poles, and they vandalize the distribution lines and what have you and what have you. Then we brought the Minister of Works that time to the Pashula, to speak about vandalism on the rails on the bridges, and of course how people can just come and without getting the authorities involved, cut off the main road simply because they want to lay pipes that will go to their houses. And this kind of thing cost a lot of money. The Minister of the FCT was brought, and he spoke about how much government would require, I think over 3 or 4 billion, just to replace the manholes in Abuja alone, in Abuja here. You see how they tamper with the street lights. You know how they tamper with the manholes. You see how they tamper with everything, and the rail lines. All of these are actually problems that citizens must have to be made aware of. That when you do this, you are not only doing it for your immediate benefit, because whatever pecuniary benefit you are going to get, you too eventually will be affected.
Yes.
You too eventually will be affected.
Directly or indirectly?
If I directly.
Directly, yeah.
Even directly. Because you wouldn't know if you vandalize the rail line, you wouldn't know when your child will be going to Kaduna, and then when the rail line is vandalized, only God knows what kind of thing will happen to the
Dr.
So
Abari.
it is actually a very big issue. The NOA is involved with this, and we are doing it actually at the grassroots levels. What we do always is actually to use the platforms of traditional institutions and the religious institutions, and we print multipliers in languages, in Hausa, in Igbo, in Yoruba, in Bagi, and then we send them out.
Okay.
We would have loved to have town hall meetings at local government levels.
All right, Dr. Abari.
But we are challenged by resources.
It's a huge task before you, but let's take this break. We're back shortly. Please stay tuned.
What are we doing as a nation to first of all settle our teeming populace, especially the
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene? I'm Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling of their.
In fact, between June 1st and July 17, 19-point-something billion has left the coffers of the NDDC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
Thanks for staying tuned. The conversation is still on citizens' participation in nation building. Dr. Abari, you were just giving us highlights of how the agency has gone far in ensuring that government assets are well protected. Kenneth, you want to pick up?
Yes, I also want to know, because we are still talking about mobilizing the public to participate actively in governance. So now I also want to know, sometimes you have the feelers that some government officials or let's say lawmakers, go to the hinterlands, to carry out their campaigns, or politicians, so to say, they will tell the public or the masses what they are going to provide for them. But sometimes you find out that the masses are not carried along in most of those facilities that are provided for them. So that's why sometimes you see, when they are not part and parcel of the discussions that brought about the facilities and all of that, so they feel indifferent about them, and that's why sometimes you see some of these vandalization and all of that. But we also want to know what the agency is doing, to mobilize people, to be part of governance, to know that it is also in their right to demand, what they want. For instance, a community may need potable water, then you will see maybe a school being built, but at the point in time, what they
primary need is water.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. I think this is something that is really of great concern to the NOA. And it is still coming to the issue of government coming clean to Nigerians. The issue of citizens' participation in terms of the questions you have just asked is of paramount importance, because they just need to be involved. Otherwise, it's just like pouring water into a basket, an open basket. I don't know whether they're closed baskets anyway, but an open basket. Now, we have seen this being done repeatedly. Take the issue of constituency projects by the National Assembly.
Yes.
Many of such projects, thoughtful as they are, just end up not meeting the requirements of the people.
Yes.
The people might probably require, or in most instances, they require something like a primary health care, and then you go to give them either grinding machine
or borehole.
Or no, even borehole is something actually, because it gives you an portable drinking water. But if a community needs a borehole, or a community needs a primary health care center, or a community requires a primary school classroom, and you give them grinding machine or hair making machine,
when they don't have electricity,
when you don't even have, when they don't even have the basics, either electricity or whatever that will make such kind of facilities work. So this is one. So the NOA was quite worried. And it's not enough to be worried about this. We went into partnership with the Independent Corrupt Practices
Offenses out of
the ICPC, the Independent Corrupt Practices and other related
Offenses Commission.
Offenses Commission. We went into partnership and we developed a program called My Constituency, My Project.
Okay.
My Constituency, My Project. The import of that partnership is first for the NOA to go and sensitize people to say whoever is coming to give them any project, they should know first that it is coming from public funds. Unless where such projects are not clearly, are clearly stated that they are coming from private funds. Otherwise, if they come under constituency projects, then such projects are coming from public funds. That's one.
Okay.
Because incidences there were when the ICPC upon investigation found out that certain individuals took public funds under the name of constituency projects and located such projects on their private property, either their farmlands or their houses or their or their companies, and so on and so forth. Now, what the NOA does is to actually engage with the people to say, any constituency project that is coming, unless it is clearly stated that it is from a public funds, private funds, is a public fund. It's from the public funds. So what should you do? You must ensure that you engage with whoever is bringing such projects, so that such do not become white elephant projects, but they are projects that will meet the immediate requirement, the immediate need of the people.
Yes.
So if it is primary health care center you require, let the primary care center be erected in the place or constructed in the place as it were. You members of the community take possession of it, protect it, ensure that it actually it is put to use and it is maximally, optimally put to use for the benefit of each and everyone. So in this case, you find some mutuality. You know, first it is from government funds, project coming to our community.
Yeah.
We owners of the community take ownership of the project because we are involved.
Yes.
Yes.
And we protect it. And because we protect it, it lasts longer. Because we are involved, all the ingredients that are needed to make it functional, you know, and they meet our needs are also factored into all of this.
Exactly.
So this is actually one of the things that the NOA has been doing with the ICPC under My Constituency, My Project.
Let me hold your thoughts there, Dr. Abari. It's very critical what you have just mentioned, and a way of putting it all-encompassing will mean inclusivity. And you can have that positive value orientation or social justice to thrive in a nation like Nigeria without having everyone being carried along. But there are shortcomings, especially in the area of, okay, everybody just throw the weights on the federal government. What about at the state level? And then in the area of fighting corruption? Because if we want certain things to thrive, we also have our role to play. While the leaders are doing their own bit, we should also be doing our own part. In fighting corruption is a collective responsibility.
I agree with you entirely. And when we hear citizens talk about fighting corruption, it is all the efforts, all the angst, all the complaints, all the abuses, all the insults are all actually thrown at the central government.
Yeah.
all at the central government. But procedurally, there is more of procedural observance at the central government that you find at the subnationals. I may perhaps, it may not actually be 100% be the case, but some of the anti-corruption processes and the procedures and gatekeeping policies that we see at the central government, if it is allowed to be cascaded to the subnationals, perhaps our fight against corruption would have gone far more than what we are seeing today.
Yeah.
A situation where every citizen, either out of ignorance, and I would want to actually attribute it to massive ignorance, feels everything must be on the foot of Mr. President, or at the feet of Mr. President, becomes a big problem. You cannot clean your drains, which is primarily the responsibility of the local government. You say it is the president. The primary health care center is not working. You say it is the president. You cannot actually even as simple as erect market stores or even protect the cemeteries. You say it is Mr. President. As simple as providing solar street lights in local government headquarters, you say it is Mr. President. Now, so what happens to the two levels of government? What happens to the two levels of government? So the point here is, first and foremost, we must have proper synergy.
Yes.
We must have proper synergy between what happens in the center and what happens in the states and what happens in the local governments. Sadly, the local government system in the country has completely gone comatose. And that is one of the reasons why we are having a lot of these security challenges. Because the criminals, the bandits, the Boko Haram elements, the extremists, whatever, live in the communities.
Yes.
They live in the local government. They live in the communities.
Exactly.
That is where intelligence sharing, that is where intelligence gathering, that is where when the criminal comes into the neighborhood, you know that a new person has come. You know, when the criminal comes in, you know that a new person has come. If a functional system would have found a way in the local administration where traditional rulers, religious leaders, community heads, community ombudsmen are all actually aggregated together to create a policing mechanism where simple issues like intelligence gathering can be done. But unfortunately, everything has been left to the central government to do. And the central government is spread too thin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Abari. Okay, yes, we are still talking about providing security, providing intelligence, every part of government, every level of government sharing, intelligence and working together to, solve this problem of insecurity. So we also talk about, there's one other, issue that government is trying to, curb now, which is drug abuse and abuse of substances and all of that. And which, from what you've said, you find out that, some of these vices, they thrive in the localities. Then if we don't have a good relationship between the traditional institution and government, you find out that it is sometimes very difficult, to get that intelligence that we need to combat all of this. So we want to know, in that respect, what have you been doing as an agency, to partner with the traditional institutions, with government at all levels, to bring up intelligence that will help government, curtail the issues of substance abuse, and also to educate the citizens, that drug the dangers in drug and drug abuse.
Now, let me say it, and it's something actually which is common. That for every right you claim from government, for every right that you claim from government must also be accompanied with a commensurate responsibility.
Yeah.
With a commensurate responsibility. And the only way to make this adage actually applicable and work is for citizens first to be good ambassadors of themselves.
Okay.
First, for citizens to be good ambassadors of themselves.
And the family has a role here to play.
Then, for citizens to be good ambassadors of whatever religious belief they profess. Both Abrahamic religions, to which majority of Nigerians actually profess, teach love, peaceful coexistence, teach loyalty to constitutional authority, teach integrity, teach honesty,
accountability,
teach so
discipline.
For each discipline and order. Yeah. So what for us to actually, but what do we see? What do we see? Some of the things that you accuse the leadership of doing, you find that the followership might be more guilty of doing. And what do I mean by saying you must be a good citizen or good ambassador of yourself? You are driving in a car, looking very responsibly dressed. You are eating corn, or you are drinking water from either whether it is bottled water or sachet water. You finish drinking, you just throw away the empty bottle or the empty sachet water on the street. You cannot keep the neighborhood drains. In fact, everybody has turned the neighborhood drains into dustbin. So every year, people have to be reminded that there is the need to clean the drains so that we do not expose ourselves to the dangers of flooding. Government has to do it. Federal government, through NIMET and the NEMA and the NOA and the NISA, all of us collaborating for us, we take the messages of NIMET to the grassroots. Yes. We take the messages of NEMA to the grassroots. NISA give us their content, we take them to the grassroots. Yet it is the federal government that is being expected to go and clean the drains in my village. Now, in this respect, coming back to our question on drug addiction,
yes.
Fundamentally, I think the problem is centered around the collapse of family values.
Okay.
Fundamentally, the collapse of family values. Because what you find, a drug addict comes from the family. He doesn't just drop like manna from heaven. And neither did he just erupt like a plant from the underground. He is a product of a family.
Sure.
He is a product of the family. He is the product of the community.
Before the larger society.
Before he becomes a product or a child of the larger society. Family values have collapsed.
Okay.
And many have argued that family values have collapsed because poverty level has increased. Poverty level has increased, some argue, because government has failed. But even if government has failed, I have a sense that I have a duty and a responsibility to actually instill discipline, bring up the child in such a manner that he becomes a responsible citizen.
Dr. Abari, we have to round off, but before we say our final goodbyes, just in brief words, it's the era of a message for hope. You know, when you were saying all of that, it just brought a lot of reflection to my mind. A lot of us want to see a Nigeria of our dreams. Nigerians are optimistic. That is if you want to be optimistic. But what is your message of hope for Nigeria?
My message is that there is nothing that a country needs for its development that Nigeria does not have in terms of human and material resources. These two ingredients are actually there and they are God given. But we also need 3 other things to accompany this. 1, the correct values.
Okay.
The values of honesty, the values of accountability, the values of integrity. That's 1. 2, character in the leadership and the character in the followership. Character in the leadership and the character in the followership. And then finally, conscious, deliberate aggregation of all of this towards achieving national development objectives.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garba Abari. He's the Director of National Orientation Agency. You've said a whole lot, and I could just imagine the task before you daily to ensure that Nigerians are carried along. Thank you very much for your time on platform.
It is my pleasure.
And wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Kenneth Inanim, our correspondent, one of our correspondents here in NTA, thank you so much for your contributions on platform.
Thank you, Ruth. It's my pleasure.
All right, we've been discussing citizens' participation in nation building. You have your blocks, I have my blocks. Together, when we keep putting it, we'll build a Nigeria of our dream where justice, equity, and fairness shall thrive. That's platform. I'm Ruth Aguele. Bye.
Days away. You can